Amazing twist. Nurse unknowingly climbs into a billionaire CEO's car. Discover what happens next. Emily's breath fogged the glass of the rideshare vehicle as she slid into the back seat, too tired to register the unfamiliar interior. "Home, please," she murmured, her muscles aching from another grueling shift at the hospital. As the car jerked off, she sunk into the luxurious leather, the scent of polish and fresh air stinging her senses. Guilt coursed through her, taking a quick glance in the rearview mirror only to find a pair of piercing blue eyes staring back at her. The ride was a blur, a world of privilege she couldn't fathom, especially considering the dingy kitchen waiting for her back home. As they drove, Emily caught herself rambling, sharing how the healthcare system felt more like a battlefield where patients were just names on charts. "We're drowning," she confessed. "If I could give my patients half the care they deserve." She trailed off, her heart heavy with their struggles. Jack listened, nodding, his gaze intense yet softened by fatigue. The man across from her, dressed in a tailored suit, seemed worlds away from her reality. "I know what you mean," he finally responded. "Care is expensive, especially when profit is king." Their conversation stirred something in her, a flicker of understanding that both of them were held captive by circumstances, though theirs wore very different skins. She knew there was more glitter in his reality, but her heart ached with every word that reminded her of the rent due and bills piled in a corner of their tiny apartment. That moment of connection felt pure, but she could hardly breathe in the truth. Did they have anything real between them, or were they just two ships passing in a storm? Before they reached her stop, Jack posed an offer that felt intoxicatingly liberating. "Why not come work for me? You could be a part of something bigger. I could use someone with your passion." It hit her like a brick. An escape from her relentless grind in the hospital. A paycheck that could ease her mother's suffering. But how could she even consider stepping into an empire renowned for its ruthlessness? The discrepancies in their worlds echoed loudly in her mind. Emily's thoughts raced through the labyrinth of her emotions. Should she take this lifeline or safeguard her integrity? The whispers surrounding Jack's company reached her ears, tales of extremes that often brushed aside morality. What was a fortune worth if it relied on the suffering of others? Her conscience flickered vehemently against golden handcuffs, yet the pang of desperation lingered too closely. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. "What's it really like in your line of work?" she asked, catching a glimpse of the conflict stirring behind Jack's polished facade. He opened his mouth, but hesitation hung in the air between them, suffocating the vulnerability they'd built. Suddenly the wheels screeched as they faced a stoplight, panic creeping in like cold fingers. What if they weren't just a chance encounter? What if their fates entwined in a way that tossed her into the very storm she feared? As she stared out at the skyline, the shimmering lights pulsed like a heartbeat, both alluring and monstrous in their beauty. Everything twinkled with possibility, but also danger. Emily wrestled with her thoughts, drowned in her burdens, and confronted by the storm of an opportunity that promised freedom, but threatened to corrupt her very soul. What choices would she make, and how would they define her? The crossroads loomed over her, a tempest waiting to unfold. Would she chase the horizon or stand firm in the shadows? The moment the car halted, a wave of uncertainty washed over Emily. She reached for the handle, her mind racing with possibilities, each a reflection of her tangled emotions. Stepping out into the brisk night air, she glanced back at Jack, caught in that liminal space between two worlds. The door closed with a soft click, but their conversation hovered like an unsolved puzzle. As she walked toward her building, every step felt heavy. The familiar cracks in the pavement mirrored the fractures in her decision-making. Could she genuinely turn her back on her calling? The stark reality she returned to, a cramped apartment where every debt loomed larger than life, loomed over her thoughts. She repressed a shiver, a reminder of the struggles that clung to her, the warmth of Jack's kind offer battling against the chilling weight of moral doubts. That night, sleep eluded her. The moments replayed, the soft lilt of Jack's voice promising a brighter future, the palpable tension when their eyes met, and the stark contrast of their existences. Despite the monotony of her routine, she'd built her life on the bedrock of patient care, each tiny victory a balm to her soul, each heartbeat an affirmation of purpose. But here sat a gilded invitation to a life where her aspirations could metamorphose into reality, a reality marred by ethical shadows. Days drifted into weeks, and still, Jack's proposition haunted her. Each morning, she donned her scrubs, navigating the chaos of the hospital, drowning in the unending waves of patient despair. But those encounters fed her resilience, further illuminating the chasm between her work's genuine aim and the polished ambition of corporate healthcare. The more she cared, the more she recognized the fading light of hope in patients' eyes. Yet the more her ambition tugged at her to explore what Jack could offer. Then, one fateful evening, after a particularly exhausting shift, Emily received a text from Jack. "Let's talk. I have something important." A mix of anticipation and dread coursed through her. She drove toward the sleek glass building that housed Jack's empire, her heart racing. Was she ready to confront the reality he represented? Inside, the air hummed with energy, a world buzzing with creatives and directors, all under Jack's command. He welcomed her with an effortless smile, but under it, she sensed a depth of knowledge he held about her turmoil that both intimidated and intrigued her. "Emily, I appreciate you coming," he started, drawing her into his office. The walls adorned with framed achievements felt suffocating. "I want to show you how my vision could align with your passion for patient care. We can make it better." The allure of transformation glimmered before her, but she hesitated, sensing the fragility of morality that lurked within the confines of ambition. But is it worth the price? The question escaped her lips before she could filter it through the cautious lens she usually wore. Jack's expression tightened, revealing a flash of vulnerability. "Price? It's the cost of progress. I know how you feel. We're all fighting for something." Emily's resolve shook as she considered the gap between the sanctity of her duties and the enticement of influence. Could she navigate this landscape without compromising her values? The prospect of leading change was intoxicating but perilous, a tightrope walk where one careless move could lead to a fall from grace. "Tell me more about your plans," she replied, the fire kindling in her heart clashing with doubts anew. As Jack elaborated, excitement entwined with trepidation, a duality that resonated deeply within her. And just as she began picturing herself in this new role, the ringing of her phone interrupted. It was a call from the hospital, announcing dire news about one of her patients. The universe had thrown her a cruel twist, thrusting her into a choice she had hoped to avoid. "Sorry, I have to take this." Without waiting for his reply, she darted outside, heart pounding. As she stepped into the chaos of medical emergencies, a simple truth dawned on her. She would always return to her roots. But what did that mean for the tantalizing path Jack had opened? Would she walk headfirst into the storm of ambition, or toe the line of her moral compass? The storm was brewing, whispers of ambition and integrity colliding within. The winds howled around her, daring a decision she must face head-on. Emily grasped the phone tight, looking toward the horizon, wondering what this path would ultimately yield, revelation or ruin. The air buzzed with tension as Emily stepped back into the hospital, her mind still swirling around Jack's words. The sharp sense of antiseptic pulled her back into a world where the stakes were palpable, where every life mattered. Yet, as she hurried down the corridors, she felt the gravitational pull of the other path, one filled with promises, power, and the uncertainty of its morality. The call had been urgent. An elderly patient she had been caring for, Mrs. Thompson, had taken a turn for the worse. Emily's heart raced as she charged through double doors to the ICU, her hands instinctively shifting from the icy grip of decision-making to the focused intensity of patient care. But even as she articulated orders to the medical staff, her mind drifted, contemplating Jack's vision for a better healthcare system. Could he actually provide the resources and innovations that would help save more lives, Or was this just a facade shrouded in corporate greed? "Emily?" A fellow nurse, Sarah, gestured her over. "You're needed here. We're losing her." Emily transitioned smoothly into action, her hands steady as she began assessing Mrs. Thompson's condition. Each delicate movement, familiar and comforting, silenced the cacophony of doubts momentarily. The beeping of the monitors and the rustle of medical paperwork became her rhythm, grounding her once more in purpose. As she became increasingly absorbed in the moment, something shifted inside her, a renewed determination sparked by her commitment to the work that offered her a clear impact. "What if you could do this on a larger scale?" Jack's voice echoed in her mind, intermingling with the sounds of fluttering pages and hurried footsteps. Her instincts screamed against the pull of ambition. Wasn't this what she had always dreamed of? A chance to innovate and improve healthcare from the inside out? But the more she fought to hold on to clarity, the more she felt Jack's presence lingering, a formidable specter that cast a shadow on her professional journey. As she stabilized Mrs. Thompson, she remembered the countless hours dedicated to understanding patient needs, the genuine compassion reflected in grateful eyes, a stark contrast to the sterile ambition Jack embodied. "Pulses steady, blood pressure's improving," Emily announced, the relief washing over the team. But instead of soaking in the moment, her mind raced toward her responsibilities outside these walls. Would a shift to Jack's world mean embracing a vision in which genuine care was secondary to profits? As she finished her shift, the echoes of laughter and warmth faded into the early morning light. With each step toward her car, a growing sense of urgency urged her to make a choice. How could she redefine her career without losing the essence of who she was? Emily plopped into the driver's seat, her stomach churning with unresolved tension. A thought emerged unbidden. Could her instincts point the way? Perhaps there was a middle ground where influence met integrity. If she took Jack's offer, could she shape it into something that truly mattered? The light of dawn broke, illuminating a new possibility. As she clutched the steering wheel, she felt the pulse of urgency beating stronger. This was more than just a career decision. It was a crossroads of her very identity. Pushing the car's ignition, Emily turned the key, committing to whatever path lay ahead. In that moment, a sudden message flashed on her phone, surprising and challenging her beliefs anew. "It's Jack. We need to discuss your role. Bring your ideas." Her chest tightened as she stared at the screen, the weight of her decision pressing heavily upon her. Whatever happened next would not just evolve her career, but redefine her very values. Would she dive into the corporate abyss or forge a new frontier where care and innovation coexisted? With barely a moment's pause, she pulled out of the parking lot, the air thick with anticipation. The storm beckoned, and the decision loomed larger than ever. Emily whispered to herself, "It's time to face what lies ahead." Challenge accepted. As Emily drove toward Jack's office, the morning sun streamed through the windshield, casting warm beams across her face. Yet the light did little to ease the turmoil within. Was she truly prepared to step into a world where her dedication to patients could become negotiable? She pulled into the parking lot of a sleek, glass-fronted building that towered over the surrounding area, a monument to corporate ambition. The contrast between her well-worn scrubs and the polished suits of arriving executives struck her painfully. Would she be just another piece on their ambitious chessboard, or could she mold her role into something that aligned with her values? The elevator ride felt interminable. With every floor it ascended, her thoughts spiraled deeper into a vortex of doubt and self-realization. What have I become? She wondered. Am I still the nurse who puts the patients first, or am I just chasing shadows? As she stepped into the conference room, Jack greeted her with a warm yet calculating smile. The room hummed with energy, filled with well-dressed individuals engaged in animated discussions. It felt foreign and intimidating, a stark dissonance to the intimate atmosphere of the hospital. "Emily, welcome. I'm glad you made it," Jack said, his authoritative voice cutting through the chatter. "I've been looking forward to our conversation." "Thanks for having me," she replied, striving to keep her tone steady. She took a seat, focusing on the flip charts and graphs that dominated the space. He was planning something grand, that much was evident. But what role could she potentially play in this vision? Jack started outlining his plans for a new healthcare initiative, showcasing data-driven projections alongside lofty ambitions. His enthusiasm was infectious, yet a nagging voice inside Emily kept questioning the real motives. Could numbers and figures actually translate to better care? Or was her dedication bound to become just another statistic within an impressive presentation? As Jack spoke, Emily's analytical mind sprang into action. He was clearly a brilliant strategist, one who understood the critical flaws in the current system. Yet, for every idea that sparked her interest, a corresponding ethical dilemma loomed large. How would she communicate the importance of patient-centered care amidst the allure of innovation?
Emily, you have such an invaluable perspective as a frontline worker. We need your experience to identify what's truly needed, Jack implored, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. Imagine introducing compassionate, innovative care on a larger scale. You could help revolutionize the industry. The prospect drew a mixture of excitement and fear. Could her voice shape this vision into something that addressed the cracks in the system while still honoring the core values of healthcare?
Jack, I appreciate your confidence in me, but I have to be clear. Any initiative must prioritize patients and their experiences. If it's purely about profits, I don't want to be involved, she asserted, surprising even herself with the firmness of her stance. His expression shifted, revealing a hint of annoyance before it masked itself behind congenial charm. Every revolution requires sacrifices, Emily, but I assure you, I want to change lives, not just numbers. A tense silence enveloped the room, each party aligned in their own vision. Emily recognized this as her moment, a chance not just to collaborate, but to advocate. Was she prepared to commit to this? Or was it merely another uphill battle against an unforgiving tide? Let's brainstorm some ideas together, she proposed, feeling a spark of newfound determination. This was her opportunity to navigate the labyrinth of corporate healthcare while remaining true to herself. As the meeting drew to a close, Emily felt the weight of the responsibility shift in her chest. But underneath the excitement, a flicker of uncertainty burned brighter. What hidden facets of Jack would she uncover as they delved deeper into this partnership? With the door closing on their discussion, she realized the leap into this new realm would require not only strategy, but a fierce resolution to protect her values. Tomorrow we can see what the groundwork looks like, Jack said smoothly. Let's plan to meet again. As she stepped back into the sunlight, the walls of the corporate office behind her felt both fortified and suffocating. Every decision carried weight now, fueling both ambition and trepidation. In that moment, Emily understood the choice ahead was not merely about career advancement, but about the fight for the sanctity of care. The storm was just beginning, and she was now an integral player in a game much larger than herself. Let's see just how far the rabbit hole goes, she whispered, determination threading through uncertainty as she pulled away from the building, unaware of the obstacles waiting just around the corner. The following morning, Emily awoke early, her mind buzzing with anticipation and dread. The sun filtered gently through her curtains, painting the room in warm hues, but the brightness felt almost mocking against her turbulent thoughts. The vision of what was at stake filled her stomach with a tight knot. Today was not just another day, it was another opportunity to confront the conflicting worlds within her, patient care and corporate strategy. As she dressed, she replayed the meeting in her mind. Jack's persuasive rhetoric lingered in her thoughts. Could she really help institute change within a system that so often prioritized profit over patient welfare? With each passing minute, she asked herself whether she had the resolve to effectuate real, meaningful change without losing her ethical core. Could she act as a catalyst for compassion in a corporate ocean of indifference? After a quick breakfast, she drove back to the imposing office building, her heart racing. The day ahead promised more meetings, more discussions, and hopefully more clarity. As she parked, the glass facade loomed above, seemingly judging her resolve. It felt as if the building itself wanted to swallow her whole. In the conference room, Jack was already deep in conversation with a few executives. Emily took a moment to gather her thoughts as she observed the room buzzing with numbers and projections that felt like an avalanche of data. She was poised to enter this world, but she needed to carve out her space without drowning in its depths. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to explore the intersection between innovative healthcare solutions and patient-centric approaches, she declared, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. The chatter hushed slightly, and she noticed Jack's eyebrow raise with interest. "Perfect timing, Emily. I was just explaining our upcoming project initiatives," he said. "I think your insights will be invaluable." As he spoke about brainstorming ideas for a new program aimed at improving patient outcomes while reducing costs, she felt a wave of unease. The more Jack outlined his strategies, the more she sensed a fine line between noble intentions and profit-driven motives. "This is where I need to speak up," she thought. With newfound courage, she brought the discussion back to human experiences. While the data suggests that efficiency lowers costs, we must also consider how these initiatives affect patients' emotional and psychological well-being. Data does not capture individual stories, Emily said, her conviction shining through. For a moment, the room was silent, all eyes on her, measuring the weight of her contributions. Jack's expression darkened slightly, but after a brief hesitation he nodded, making a mental note of her comments. "Absolutely. We shouldn't disregard the emotional aspects. I'd like to hear more about what specific changes you think we could implement," he responded, his tone slightly more cautious. As they delved deeper into the discussion, she felt a newfound clarity. With each question she posed, each insight she shared, she was constructing the narrative she wanted to champion. She began to understand that personal storytelling could play a vital role in bridging the gap between numbers and human experiences. However, alongside her growing confidence came the haunting awareness of the fragility of this partnership. What if Jack's genuine interest was merely a facade? What if he aimed to use her as a pawn in his corporate chess game? As the hours rolled on, a strategy began to take shape, one that integrated empathy with efficacy. But in her quest for balance, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that an obstacle awaited her, lurking just out of sight. After the meeting, Jack approached her with a mixed expression of admiration and wariness. "You've made some compelling points today, Emily. We should really consider a focus group with patients to gain first-hand narratives. What do you think?" "Absolutely," she replied, recognizing this could be her opening. "Let's invite some community members to share their experiences with us. That's where true innovation begins." His smile seemed genuine, yet a shadow flickered behind his eyes, as if he were calculating something beyond their discussion. As Emily left the meeting, a shiver of unease coursed through her. She realized she was wearing a mask that both protected and isolated her from the corporate world. The questions lingering in her mind would not dissipate easily. Was she merely a pawn, or could she be something more? With her heart pounding, she made her way to the elevator. Tomorrow's meeting held the promise of a new direction, but also the weight of greater responsibility. She had to decide whether to continue navigating this delicate balance, and she couldn't shake the feeling that every choice carried significant ramifications. Outside, she saw a black SUV approaching. The driver, a stern-looking man in a suit, caught her attention and rolled down the window. "Miss Thompson?" he asked, his tone clipped. "I have an urgent message for you from Mr. Jack." Emily's stomach dropped. What could this mean? As she hesitated by the curb, the door to the car swung open invitingly, catching her off guard. "Please get in. He needs to speak with you right away," the driver insisted, impatience threading through his words. Was she stepping into another layer of the corporate labyrinth? Her heart raced, but curiosity compelled her to confront the unknown. As she slipped into the plush back seat, a whisper of apprehension danced through her mind. Little did she know this encounter would plunge her deeper into a world where choices were not always clear, and consequences could reshape everything she had fought for. "Let's see where this road leads," she said quietly, determined to unravel the complexities ahead. As Emily settled into the leather seat, the door clicked shut with a finality that sent her pulse racing. The driver remained silent, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, leaving her alone with her anxiety. She glanced around the lavish interior, feeling a stark contrast to the sterile environment of her hospital. The air was thick with anticipation, and she couldn't help but wonder what Jack wanted to discuss that couldn't wait for their next meeting. "Where are we headed?" she finally asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "To Mr. Jack's office. He would prefer to speak to you privately," the driver replied, his tone dismissive as if her curiosity were an inconvenience. Taking a deep breath, Emily felt the tension coil in her stomach. What awaited her in that office? In a world where her resolve had been tested, this moment felt like a pivot point, one that could propel her toward either triumph or disaster. She thought back to the discussion about patient focus groups. If Jack's intentions were sincere, they could align to form a project that mattered. But was it really that simple? The car glided through the city streets, and as they approached a sleek skyscraper, the driver handed over her identification to a guard and ushered her into the building. The well-manicured lobby buzzed with energy, business people in sharp suits and polished shoes, engaged in animated conversations. How far removed they were from the worlds of compassion and care she had left behind. The elevator ride to the top floor only deepened her introspection. Every upward tick felt like a scrutiny of her choices. What if she didn't belong in this space? What if the corporate mindset consumed her altruism whole? Yet, with every second, a fierce determination began to blossom. When the doors opened, Emily stepped into a sprawling office illuminated by floor-to-ceiling windows. As the view revealed a breathtaking panorama of the city, her gaze shifted to Jack, who stood by the glass with a casual yet commanding posture. "Emily, thank you for coming so quickly," he said without turning around. His voice held a mixed tone of urgency and casualness, indicative of their evolving relationship. "Of course, Jack. You mentioned it was urgent," she managed, suppressing the flutter of nerves in her gut as she moved closer. He turned, his expression shifting to seriousness. "We need to talk strategy for the focus groups. I want to ensure we approach this correctly from the get-go." She studied him carefully, trying to gauge whether his intensity was genuine or just a front to justify his methods. "What kind of strategy are you envisioning?" she asked cautiously. Jack pulled out a sleek tablet and swiped through a series of graphics and presentations. "I'm proposing we combine quantitative data from surveys with qualitative insights from these focus groups. It's crucial that we present it at the upcoming board meeting to secure funding." A gnawing feeling surfaced. "Funding?" she echoed, furrowing her brow. "Are you saying this is more about profit than actual patient support?" He stepped forward, leaning closer as if to draw her in. "Emily, I understand your concerns. But think about the larger picture. Without funding, we risk losing the very programs that support patients. This is our chance to blend both worlds." His words were persuasive, compelling her to reconsider, yet she sensed an underlying pivot in his rationale. Protecting profit while exploiting patient stories felt dangerously close to her worst fears. "I want to ensure that we never lose sight of why we're doing this," she retorted, mustering every ounce of conviction. Jack studied her, and the flicker of amusement in his eyes made her uneasy. "It appears you're more than just another healthcare professional, Emily. You might even be the key to bridging that gap." The compliment made her heart swell, but it was overshadowed by fear. She was stepping deeper into unknown waters. What if this admiration turned into something else? "We should also discuss your position going forward," Jack suggested, shifting gears like a skilled negotiator. "With your insights and compassion, we could use you as a spokesperson for these initiatives." Emily took a step back mentally. Being a spokesperson, that was suddenly a role with substantial pressure. "What are you implying, Jack?" "Simply that your perspective is valuable, not just in the posters you'll help create, but in every conversation we have. This project could define your career," he explained smoothly, each word dripping with allure. But at what cost? The prospect of personal gain began to gnaw at her conscience. She wondered if aligning too closely with Jack could mean compromising her core values. She would need to tread carefully. As their discussion continued, Emily envisioned a potential tumultuous path ahead. She was on the cusp of getting everything she desired: recognition, responsibility, and a way to impact patient care. Yet, the shadow of uncertainty loomed large, reminding her that glowing opportunities often had darker edges. "Emily," Jack's voice broke through her thoughts, "we can change lives together. If you're willing to collaborate and steer the operation, there's no telling what we can achieve." Could she really embrace this alliance, or would she find herself torn between ambition and ethics? As her heart raced again, she felt a new urgency settle within her. Would she risk everything she stood for in pursuit of a vision? Or could she find another pathway that combined both worlds? For the first time, she realized that her next decision wasn't just pivotal for her career. It was a defining moment of her identity. As she stared into Jack's eager eyes, the world outside seemed to fade. Would she rise to the occasion, or would she falter under pressure? "Let's proceed then," she said, a quiet determination firming her voice. Could this choice ultimately refine her narrative, or lead her further into disarray? Just as she spoke, there was a knock at the office door, and Jack's expression shifted, everything now tinged with urgency. "We need to discuss the board meeting. It's happening earlier than expected." Emily's heartbeat quickened. What storm had she just walked into, and how far behind was her conscience? Emily's pulse quickened as Jack motioned for her to follow him. The urgency in his tone pressed against her, a palpable weight that drew her deeper into the realm of corporate maneuvering she had only glimpsed from the periphery. As they walked through the expansive office, decorated with sleek modern art and expansive views of the city, she felt a surge of anticipation mixed with anxiety. "Focus groups are not just a formality," Jack said as they entered a conference room. "They'll shape how we present our case. If we're not compelling, the board will think this is just another healthcare gimmick." "Right," Emily replied, taking a seat at the large polished table. The flickering screens and projected graphs felt foreign. She had always been on the front lines, ankle-deep in patient care, not the boardroom battles. Jack clicked a remote, and the screens flickered to life, displaying a barrage of statistics and graphs. "We have 5 days until the meeting. I believe you should lead the patient narratives. They're the heart of our initiative." She felt a rush of excitement entangled with fear immediately rise within her. "Lead the narratives? I'm not trained for that. I'm an advocate, not a spokesperson." "Exactly," he countered, leaning forward with intensity. "You understand the patient's perspectives better than anyone else in this room. Your authenticity will resonate. It will be the difference between winning and losing the board's support." Emily's grip on the edge of the table tightened. She could feel the tremors of doubt rising within her. While advocacy had been a comfortable, familiar ground, the idea of being thrust into a spotlight was daunting. "But what if they don't connect with me? What if I can't convey their stories effectively?" Jack's eyes sparkled with conviction. "You care. That's your strength. You've lived it with them. You know their fears, hopes, and experiences. The board needs to hear that. Those moments matter in this corporate environment." He was right, she mused, but coupling heartfelt stories with the stark reality of business felt like walking a tightrope. Could she articulate the human element while navigating the financial implications? With every point Jack made, her anxiety morphed into recognition. Her experiences at the hospital had molded her into an advocate, a voice for the vulnerable. But could she transform that voice into a narrative that didn't exploit their hardships, but rather illuminated their needs? "Okay," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her reply. "Let's talk through how we can present this." Jack smiled, a flicker of approval in his gaze. For the first time, she felt like a partner in this urgent endeavor rather than just his plaything. They threw around ideas, crafting narratives around real patients, emphasizing care as the backbone of their initiative. But as they delved deeper, her instincts began to whisper concerns. What was Jack's true motivation, the numbers or the patients? Each time she looked up from her notes, Jack seemed more consumed by the strategy than the stories they were drafting. His business acumen dazzled, yet Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being manipulated into a corporate game she barely understood. After a rapid-fire discussion, they wrapped up the session with hours to spare before the meeting. Emily stood, her body buzzing with nervous energy. She had agreed to this challenge, but questions loomed. Would she remain grounded in her convictions when faced with the board's expectations? Or would Jack's vision reshape her into someone she didn't recognize? "Emily, you did great today," Jack remarked, his voice radiating confidence. "You're going to shine." The praise twisted within her, a mix of gratitude and apprehension. Success could mean validation, but at what cost? As she left the conference room, Her mind raced with strategies, but beneath that, the pulsing worry of losing her sense of self grew. How far would she have to go to reconcile her ideals with this newly forged ambition? Standing before the elevator, staring at her reflection in the polished steel doors, the questions inexorably piled on. What would it mean to deviate from the path of patient care toward this corporate landscape? With each tick of the clock, she sensed the balance of power tilting against her foundational beliefs. Just as the elevator doors slid open with a chime, she caught a glimpse of Jack's satisfied expression through the glass. A shiver of apprehension coursed through her. Perhaps she was already too far from the place she had once called home. The moment was destined for tension. Should she continue on this path, risking everything she had worked for? Or was it time to reclaim her narrative? As she stepped inside with a swirl of determination, she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning of a far more complicated story. And as the doors closed, sealing her decision, a sudden premonition struck her. Would she find the courage to confront Jack's true intentions before it was too late? Emily stepped out of the elevator, her heartbeat echoing in her ears like the ticking of an unseen clock. The buzz from the earlier meeting had not faded. Rather, it had sparked an internal wildfire. She rushed to her desk, fueled by a determination she hadn't realized was brewing beneath her initial doubts. She needed to prepare her own statements, understand the narratives she would eventually present. Though fear lingered, a sense of purpose forged its way forward. With each document she pored over, every statistic she analyzed, she found layers of truth that felt tangible. She took a deep breath and allowed herself to visualize the patients, faces etched with hope, skepticism, and longing for better care. As she began crafting the stories that would reflect their struggles and triumphs, she heard a voice whispering doubt. What if these narratives were reduced to mere data points by the board? What if Jack's corporate machine consumed her authenticity? Hours slipped by while Emily passionately worked, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Each character she crafted held weight, embodied experiences that had the potential to sway decisions and, ultimately, lives. Yet, with each story, she caught herself seeking Jack's approval, unknowingly placing his validation on a pedestal that tugged at the core of her identity. Just then, the unmistakable sound of high-heeled shoes echoed in the hallway, instantly snapping her from her creative trance. She glanced up to find Anna, Jack's right-hand assistant, approaching her desk. Anna's polished exterior radiated confidence and ambition, a stark contrast to Emily's growing insecurities. "Hey, Emily, Jack wants you to prepare a few bullet points to accompany the narratives for tomorrow's meeting. Simple and concise," Anna instructed, a smile plastered on her face. "He thinks you're going to be the star." A mix of admiration and unease stirred within Emily. She nodded, gripping her pen tightly. "Of course, I'll get right on it." But as Anna walked away, that whisper of doubt turned into a clamor within her. She resented the implication that her voice was merely to embellish Jack's plan. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the office space as Emily worked late into the evening. She fought through fatigue, wrestling with her growing resentment towards how her passion for advocacy was dangerously intertwining with corporate ambition. Finally, when her thoughts spiraled into confusion, she closed her laptop, despair settling in her chest. She'd lost the clarity that defined her as a caregiver. The lines between patient care and corporate objectives blurred dangerously, threatening to consume her. Just as she contemplated leaving for the night, her phone rang. A message from Jack illuminated the screen. "Can we chat?" A knot formed in her stomach. Was this a pivotal moment, or merely another step deeper into a world she wasn't sure she wished to traverse? Emily took a moment to gather her thoughts. Here was her chance to confront the anxiety that had wrapped around her like a vice. She couldn't ignore it. With newfound determination, she replied, "Yes, where?" Moments later, Jack emerged from the conference room, a confident smile on his face. "Emily, I'm glad you're still here. I want to discuss how we can elevate those narratives. I firmly believe there's a potential to play it up for the board." His words dripped with intent, setting off alarm bells in her mind. "What do you mean by play it up?" Jack waved his hand dismissively. "You know how the board thinks. They need to feel something, a sense of urgency." The warning signs flared in Emily's mind. challenging her resolve. But these are real people with real stories. We can't exploit that, Jack. Jack's expression shifted, shades of irritation surfacing. Emily, it's about securing the funding to help those people. You have to understand, the board won't touch it if it doesn't add up financially. A heaviness settled over Emily as she processed his words. Was Jack's vision merging into something she couldn't condone? Would she lose herself while navigating this complex corporate landscape? As their conversation deepened, an unsettling realization washed over her. The personal price of this journey was unfolding. Would she compromise her integrity for the sake of acceptance in this new realm? Just then, a flicker of understanding ignited within her. What if, she said cautiously, I represent these stories not as a mere numbers game, but as pivotal moments to drive change? Jack's brow furrowed, intrigued yet uncertain. Before he could respond, Emily urged herself to dig deeper. What if we frame it as not just a financial venture, but a human call to action? His silence hung between them, suffused with tension. Would that resonate? She pressed on, her pulse racing. Her internal stakes had never been higher. The balance was tipping. Could she redefine success in this newfound power dynamic? As the enormity of her own voice surged to the forefront, she stood at a precipice, ready to confront both her ambitions and Jack's cynical view. This wasn't just Jack's journey anymore. Tomorrow, she would take the first step in reclaiming her narrative. But would it be enough to bridge the growing divide without losing everything she stood for? With the dawn breaking, Emily arrived at the office, her heart racing with anticipation and trepidation. The welcoming hum of the workplace felt different today. It echoed like a prelude to a critical moment. Each step towards her desk intensified her sense of purpose, sharpening her focus on the task that lay ahead. Today wasn't about placating Jack. It was about reclaiming her narrative. As she settled into her chair, the river of thoughts flooded her mind. The stories she had crafted were more than mere statistics to be manipulated for the board. They were vessels of hope that needed to shine through the fog of corporate jargon. Emily pulled her laptop closer, resisting the urge to drown in self-doubt. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. She had to remind herself that authenticity in her narratives was paramount. She flipped through her notes, recalling the faces of her patients, the glimpses of determination in their eyes as they paddled through challenges and triumphs. Each story she'd composed resonated with truth, and it was that truth she needed to present fiercely. Every bullet point should amplify the emotional impact of their experiences, compelling the board to see the human value entwined within the metrics. Just before the meeting commenced, Emily spotted Anna chatting vivaciously across the room. A pang of jealousy pricked at Emily. Anna had a confidence that seemed effortless, a stark reminder of what felt elusive to her. Yet Emily quickly shook off that thought. Today was not about comparison. She took a deep breath, seeking clarity. As she prepared her materials, she could feel a shift in her confidence. The narratives weren't going to be just enhancements to Jack's ambitions. They would be her own rallying cry, her statement against the potential reduction of human experience to mere numbers. Finally, the clock struck 10. Emily gathered her notes, steeling herself for the confrontation that lay ahead. Jack strode into the room, a presence that demanded attention. The board members trickled in, settling into their seats, each one a lens through which her work would be scrutinized. Thank you all for your time, Jack began, establishing the meeting's purpose. We have some compelling narratives to present today, which I am confident will solidify the funding we need. As his words trailed off, Emily felt the weight of her heartbeat surge, pounding against her ribcage. She wouldn't let fear limit her voice. Her moment would come soon. Emily, let's hear your insights, Jack directed, his smile both encouraging and a bit sly. He leaned back, a hunter watching his prey. Stepping forward, she lifted her gaze, meeting the eyes of the board. I propose we approach these narratives not merely as stories, but as emotional truths that reveal the profoundly human side of our healthcare mission. These people we represent face life-changing battles. Their experiences are data-rich insights that deserve to be conveyed with dignity and respect. The board murmured, some shifting in their seats, and she pressed on, fueled by the resonance of their initial skepticism. For instance, Let's consider Sarah, a mother fighting chronic illness yet maintaining hope for her children's futures. Her story isn't just statistics, it's a poignant reminder of why our services matter. As she articulated each narrative, she could see the board's expressions shifting. The language of her advocacy resonated in the space, wrapping itself around the room like an enlivened force. She could feel Jack's scrutiny, an intensity building behind his calm exterior, but this was a battle in her hands now. After she concluded her presentation, silence enveloped the room. It hung there like thick fog, almost tangible. Then, one of the board members, a stern-looking woman with piercing eyes, broke the stillness. While heartfelt, do you really believe emotional stories will translate into actionable insights that justify the funding? Emily's heart raced, recalling all the moments of doubt and reconsideration. If we strip away the emotional resonance, we strip away our mission's real value. Yes, metrics matter, but what gives them meaning is the human experience behind them. If we can foster a connection, we can drive both awareness and funding. This isn't just business, it's humanity. The room buzzed with discussions as Emily's words ignited serious contemplation. She had crossed a line she once hesitated to approach, navigating not just the board's expectations but solidifying her own understanding of what it meant to advocate genuinely. Jack's expression remained inscrutable, but in that moment, Emily felt the flicker of hope, a possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, she could chart a new course here. As the meeting adjourned, her pulse quickened with either anticipation or dread. She couldn't tell which. This was only the beginning, a skirmish in a much larger war for her integrity and vision. Her eyes caught Jack's, and a silent exchange passed between them, filled with unspoken challenges. With the board's indecision looming like a shadow, Emily suddenly realized what lay ahead. She must confront not only Jack's expectations, but also her own ideals. What choices would she need to make when the humanism she championed came under siege again? Would she stand firm or succumb to the very dynamics she sought to change? The board's indecision crept into the atmosphere like a tempest, but the storm brewing within Emily could no longer be quelled. In the days that followed the meeting, she found herself entrenched in a whirlwind of emotions. She had shared the narratives of her patients with integrity, yet the corporate structure wrapped around her began to constrict, almost suffocating her sense of purpose. Emily delved into research, consulting literature on effective health advocacy and patient engagement. Each discovery reaffirmed her belief. Real change stemmed from empathy, not just data. She refused to let Jack's intent overshadow her advocacy. Recognition didn't just give her a voice, it also elevated her responsibility. Yet, the deeper she ventured into the corporate labyrinth, the more she felt Jack's presence looming. She glimpsed the dichotomy in his character, a talented businessman with a laser focus on metrics, slowly clashing against the compassionate nurse fighting for her patients' rights. Was she becoming another cog in the machine? Or could she take a stand and reshape the narrative to fit both her goals and Jack's ambitions? Facing Jack became increasingly daunting. Their conversations shifted. The once open dialogues had been intricately stitched with tension. Whenever she deflected a request to dilute emotional narratives for corporate comfort, his patience began to wane. And then came the pivotal moment, the day of the follow-up board meeting. Emily stood in front of her mirror, wearing her favorite blouse that reminded her of the humane values she held dear. "Today is not just about what the board wants to hear," she whispered to herself. "It is about what patients need to say." In the meeting room, tension hung thick as everyone waited, Jack pacing with palpable anxiety. "Emily, you have to concede some ground this time. We're facing some strong resistance. The focus on patient stories isn't resonating as we hoped," he hissed quietly before the meeting commenced. "Jack," she replied firmly, "I refuse to negotiate the dignity of my patients for the sake of profit. We need to change the framework, not the content." As the board settled in, she steadied her breath and prepared to present the refined analysis she had worked so diligently on. This was her opportunity, her stage to merge heartfelt advocacy with tangible strategies that would redefine their approach. She articulated the necessity of retaining the emotional core while integrating actionable insights that answered corporate objectives. The board listened intently, and this time, Wary expressions from Jack began to shift as her words ignited a flicker of acknowledgement. These stories resonate and translate directly into better patient outcomes. Emily urged again. If we want funding, we need to show that human connection leads to loyalty, a loyalty that drives numbers. Every point relates back to care. When she finished, the board members exchanged looks, murmurs of consensus rippling through the room. The change was palpable. Just moments ago, they had been resistant, and now, a door was slightly ajar. Emily, you've demonstrated that compassion is intricately tied to effective strategy. I could get behind this, said the woman who had questioned her last time, and others nodded in agreement. Jack stood silent, observing, his expression inscrutable. The breath of relief she drew in felt like the first ray of sunlight piercing through storm clouds. In that moment, Emily realized she had stepped into her power. It wasn't just about her role in Jack's world anymore. It was about transforming that world to accommodate the very ethos she had fought to protect. As the board voted in favor of her proposed plan, a wave of vindication washed over her. She had proven not only to them, but more importantly, to herself, that authenticity could prevail even in the most corporate of arenas. She would hold this position, not forfeiting her values, but using her role to bridge the gap between compassion and commerce. In the weeks that followed, Emily established focus groups that intertwined patient narratives with actionable data, forming a robust narrative that gained traction internally. Jack's initial trepidations slowly faded, and he began to recognize the potential within her vision. She had achieved a significant cultural shift within the company and transformed the foundation of their healthcare initiative into something deeply empathetic. As she stood by a window in the office, surveying the city outside, Emily felt a profound connection to her journey. She was no longer just a nurse in scrubs. She had become an architect of change, harmonizing heartfelt care with strategic innovation. Her dialogue was one of power, nurturing the convergence of two worlds she had once thought incompatible. Emily smiled softly, feeling the fulfillment radiate from within her. This was her achievement, growing and evolving into a position of influence that aligned truly with her values. She had conquered the internal storm and emerged resolute. With renewed confidence, she accepted Jack's invitation to present their achievements at the upcoming healthcare conference. This would not be merely a reflection of success. It would become the anthem of advocacy intertwined with strategy, a story begging to be told. As she embraced her newfound role, a steady resolve gripped her. Tomorrow's conference would mark not the end, but the beginning of consolidating her identity. Under the brilliance of the stage lights, she would advocate for her patients while illuminating the pathway for empathy within the corporate labyrinth of healthcare. Looking ahead, Emily was ready to embrace whatever challenges awaited, and by doing so, she made a steadfast promise to herself. This would not just be about climbing corporate ladders. It would be about uplifting the people whose stories deserve to be heard. She had transformed her struggle into purpose. Now, forward, she would march, into the light of her evolving legacy, an empowered advocate in the intricate tapestry of healthcare. Remember, this journey doesn't end here. Your own stories of overcoming adversity and advocating for change are just as vital. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss out on future exclusive emotional stories that could empower you to transform your reality. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the message far and wide. Comment below your reactions and theories about Emily's incredible transformation. Your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because we all deserve to rise. Don't wait even one more second to support this channel.